I never imagined that a single evening could change everything in my family forever. Looking back now, I realize how small moments often carry the heaviest weight. Moments you don't see coming, moments that shift the course of lives without warning. It was a quiet Saturday afternoon when it all began. I was at home tidying up the living room and preparing for the weekend. My husband was away on a business trip, so it was just me and my teenage son, Armin. He was 16 then, an age full of curiosity, confusion, and the beginning of independence. He had grown into a polite, responsible boy, but like any teenager, he had his secrets and moments where he wanted to test limits. That day, Armin came home earlier than usual from school. I noticed he looked a little anxious, like he was carrying something heavy on his mind. I asked him if everything was okay, but he just shrugged and said, "I'm fine, Mom." Later, as I was making some tea, I heard a soft knock on my bedroom door. It was Armin. He looked hesitant but determined. "Mom," he said quietly, "can you help me with something?" Curious, I told him to come in. He sat down on the edge of the bed and avoided my eyes for a moment. Then he blurted out, "I need you to do something for me before Dad gets back." My heart skipped a beat. The way he said it made my mind race with questions, but I kept my voice calm. "What is it, Armin? You can tell me." He took a deep breath and said, "I need a massage. My back has been hurting after soccer practice and I don't want Dad to see me like this." I smiled softly. It wasn't the first time Armin had complained about muscle pain after sports, but I sensed there was more to it. Maybe he was nervous about something else, or maybe he just wanted some quiet time with me. "All right," I said. "Come here." I helped him lie down on the bed and began gently massaging his shoulders. As I worked, I tried to stay focused on the moment. The way his muscles tensed and relaxed under my hands, the way his breathing changed, and how a flicker of relief crossed his face. But then something unexpected happened. Armin's hands, which had been resting quietly, started to tremble. His eyes widened slightly and he looked almost scared. "Mom," he whispered, "before Dad walks in, do it now." Those words hit me like a thunderbolt. What did he mean? Why was he so urgent? I froze for a moment, unsure of what to do next. I asked him gently, "Armin, what exactly do you want me to do? Tell me clearly." He looked down, fiddling with his fingers nervously. "Just, I don't want Dad to find out about the pain. He can be tough sometimes and I don't want him to think I'm weak." Hearing those words made my heart ache. I remembered how strict my husband could be, especially when it came to showing any kind of vulnerability. I reassured Armin, "It's okay to have pain. It doesn't make you weak. And you can always talk to me about anything, even if Dad doesn't understand right away." He nodded slowly, seeming relieved. I continued the massage carefully, focusing on soothing the tense muscles in his back. Armin sighed deeply and the tension in his body began to melt away. As I worked, I thought about the delicate balance I had to maintain between being a mother, a wife, and someone who supports her child through difficult times. Armin's hesitation reminded me how often teenagers feel trapped between their own feelings and the expectations of their parents. They want to be strong and independent but also need comfort and understanding. After a while, Armin sat up and looked at me with gratitude. "Thanks, Mom. That really helped." I smiled and gave him a gentle hug. "Anytime, sweetheart. Remember, you don't have to hide from your feelings. I'm always here." Just then, I heard the sound of the front door opening. My husband was back earlier than expected. Armin's eyes widened again and he quickly stood up. "Mom, before Dad walks in, do it now." His voice was urgent but also a little playful this time. I realized he was teasing me, trying to lighten the mood. We both laughed quietly, relieved that the tension had passed. That evening we sat together for dinner, sharing stories from our day. Armin seemed more relaxed and I could see the boy I loved, confident, growing, and ready to face whatever came next. Looking back, I understand that moment was about much more than a massage. It was about trust, about the silent ways families communicate, about the small acts of care that mean everything. I never forgot Armin's words, "Before Dad walks in, do it now." They remind me how important it is to be present, to listen, and to act with love, especially when life feels complicated. Because sometimes the simplest gestures hold the greatest power. And in our family, those moments made all the difference. The days that followed that afternoon felt different. There was a new kind of understanding between Armin and me, an unspoken connection that came from sharing something quiet, something that only we knew. I could see that he was carrying some weight inside, but he wasn't ready to talk about it fully yet. Still, the way he looked at me, sometimes with a hesitant smile or a quick glance, told me he trusted me more. That weekend, while my husband was still away, I decided to spend some extra time with Armin. I thought maybe we could do something simple, just the two of us, to strengthen that bond. Maybe watch a movie, cook dinner together, or take a walk in the nearby park. It was late afternoon when I found him sitting alone in his room, headphones on, staring out the window. He looked pensive, almost lost in thought. I knocked gently on the door and came inside. "Hey Armin," I said softly. "Mind if I sit with you for a while?" He pulled off his headphones and gave me a small smile. "Sure, Mom." I sat beside him on the bed, careful not to crowd his space. We stayed quiet for a few moments. Sometimes, silence can be comforting, like a soft blanket wrapping around two souls who need time to heal. Then he spoke, almost as if testing the waters. "Mom, do you think Dad ever worries about me?" I looked at him, surprised by the question. "What do you mean?" "Well, sometimes he's so busy with work and everything else, I'm not sure if he notices what I'm going through." I nodded slowly. "I think he does care, even if he doesn't always show it the way we expect. But it's true. Adults get caught up in their own worries, and sometimes it's hard to see what's right in front of them." Armin seemed to relax a little. "I just don't want to disappoint him. He has high expectations." That hit me hard. Every parent wants their child to succeed, but it's so important to remind them that love isn't about perfection. "Armin, nobody is perfect. Your dad loves you no matter what. And if you ever feel overwhelmed or scared, you can always talk to me or him. We're a team, remember?" He smiled, and for the first time in days, I saw a flicker of hope in his eyes. Later that evening, we cooked dinner together. It was a simple meal, but it felt special. Armin chopped vegetables carefully, humming a tune under his breath, and I stirred the sauce, feeling grateful for this moment. After dinner, we settled on the couch and started watching an old family movie, the kind we used to watch when he was younger. I noticed how Armin laughed quietly at the funny parts and how he seemed more relaxed. When the movie ended, Armin looked at me seriously. "Mom, can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Why do you and Dad always seem so distant sometimes? Like there's something unsaid between you?" I sighed softly. That was a question I had asked myself many times too. Sometimes grown-ups have problems they don't know how to fix. Sometimes they worry about things they don't tell others. But that doesn't mean they don't love each other. Or you. It's just complicated. Armin nodded, understanding more than he let on. That night, as I tucked him into bed, I thought about how important it was to be there for him. Not just as a mother, but as a friend who listens without judgment. The next few days went by quietly, but I noticed something changing. Armin seemed more open, even started sharing small things about his day at school and his friends. I realized he was slowly letting me in bit by bit. One afternoon he came to me with a small notebook. "Mom, I've been writing some thoughts. Sometimes it helps to put feelings on paper." I took the notebook and flipped through the pages. The words were simple but honest. About school pressure, about feeling alone, about wanting to make his parents proud. I hugged him tightly. "Thank you for trusting me with this. It's brave to share your feelings." He smiled shyly. As the weekend came to an end, my husband called to say he'd be home the next day. I felt a mix of emotions, relief, nervousness, and hope. I wanted everything to be okay, but I knew that the real challenge would come when the family was together again. That evening, as I prepared Armin's favorite dinner, he came to me and said quietly, "Mom, before Dad walks in, do it now." I looked at him and laughed softly, remembering those words from that first afternoon. But this time I knew exactly what he meant. To talk, to connect, to be open before the moment slipped away. I took his hand and said, "Let's be honest with each other, no matter what." And in that simple promise, I felt a new beginning. A chance for healing, for understanding, and for the family we all wanted to be. The next morning, the house was quiet, but the tension was palpable. My husband's return was just hours away, and the thought of everything we'd been holding inside finally facing the light made my heart race. I glanced at Armin, who seemed lost in his own thoughts, sitting by the window. His usual easygoing smile was gone, replaced by something more serious, maybe even fearful. I decided to take the first step. I sat beside him and gently asked, "Armin, do you want to talk about what's been bothering you?" He looked at me for a long moment, his eyes searching mine as if looking for permission to be honest. Finally he nodded. "I don't want Dad to think I'm weak." "That's understandable," I said softly. But being honest about your feelings isn't weakness. It's strength. It shows you're human. He sighed and began to share little things. How school had become overwhelming, how sometimes he felt invisible at home, and how he feared disappointing both of us. His voice was low, almost hesitant, but each word seemed to release some of the pressure he had been carrying. Listening to him, I realized how important it was to create a space where he felt safe no matter what. I told him that it was okay to feel scared or unsure, and that no matter what happened, I would always be there for him. We spent the morning talking about small things, his hobbies, friends, and dreams for the future. The tension in the room eased, replaced by warmth and understanding. I reminded him that he wasn't alone in this. We were a team, a family that could face anything together. Later that afternoon, as I prepared the house for my husband's arrival, Armin helped me tidy up. We moved quietly, working side by side without the need for many words. There was comfort in the routine, in the simple act of working together toward a shared goal. When the door finally opened and my husband stepped inside, I felt a rush of emotions: hope, anxiety, and determination. I knew that this moment could be the turning point for all of us. My husband greeted us warmly, but I noticed the tiredness in his eyes. The weight of his work and responsibilities was clear, but there was also a kindness that had always drawn me to him. That evening after dinner, I suggested we all sit together for a while. Armin seemed nervous, but he agreed. We settled into the living room, the soft glow of the lamp creating a cozy atmosphere. I took a deep breath and spoke honestly. There's something I think we all need to talk about. It's important that we're open with each other. My husband nodded, his expression attentive. Armin looked at both of us and, with a shaky voice, began to share some of the feelings he had been holding inside. The pressure at school, the fear of not meeting expectations, and the loneliness he sometimes felt even when surrounded by family. My husband listened quietly, his face unreadable. When Armin finished, he reached out and put a hand on his shoulder. "Son, I'm sorry if I ever made you feel alone or unheard. Sometimes I get caught up in work and forget what's most important." There was a pause, heavy but healing. "I love you and I'm proud of you no matter what." Armin's eyes glistened and I felt tears prick my own. It was a moment of real connection, fragile but full of promise. Over the next few days, we all made an effort to rebuild the bridges that had been weakened. We shared meals, talked more openly, and found ways to support each other. It wasn't perfect. There were still moments of frustration and misunderstanding, but the foundation of trust was growing stronger. One afternoon, Armin came to me with a drawing he had made, a simple sketch of our family holding hands. He smiled shyly and said, "I want us to be closer." I hugged him tightly, feeling grateful for his courage. That weekend we planned a family outing, a picnic in the park. It was a small gesture, but for us, it meant the world. We laughed, played games, and created new memories. As I watched Armin run freely, his face lit up with joy. I realized how important it was to cherish these moments, to hold on to hope even when times are tough. The journey wasn't over, but we had taken the first steps toward healing. And sometimes that's all it takes. The days following our family picnic felt different. There was an unspoken shift in the air, as if the walls between us had quietly started to come down. I noticed small changes in Armin's behavior. He seemed lighter, more willing to talk about his day and his thoughts. It wasn't all perfect, but it was progress, and I held on to that hope tightly. One evening I found Armin sitting on the porch, staring at the stars. I sat beside him without saying anything at first, just sharing the quiet. After a while he sighed and spoke softly, "Mom, I think I was scared to tell you and Dad how I really felt. I didn't want to disappoint you." I smiled gently. "You could never disappoint us. We love you for who you are, not for what you do or don't do." He looked up at me, eyes wide. "I wish I knew that sooner." I reached out and took his hand in mine. It's never too late to start being honest. That's how we get closer. That night, as we talked more openly, I realized how important it was to create space for those conversations. Not just the big ones, but the everyday talks about fears, hopes, and even the small victories. Armin began to open up about his friends, his school projects, and even the pressures he faced from expectations, both his own and others. I could see the weight slowly lifting off his shoulders, replaced by a quiet confidence. I wanted to protect him from the world's harshness, but also knew he had to learn to stand strong on his own. One afternoon, while preparing dinner, Armin came into the kitchen and shyly asked if he could help. His offer surprised me and I welcomed it. Together we chopped vegetables, stirred sauces, and shared stories about the day. It was a simple moment, but one that felt deeply meaningful. As we cooked, he told me about a new friend he'd made, someone who had been kind and supportive during a tough time. I was grateful to hear that he was building connections that brought him joy. Later, my husband joined us in the kitchen and the three of us shared a warm meal. There was laughter, light teasing, and a sense of belonging. It reminded me of why family mattered so much. It was a place where we could be ourselves no matter how messy life got. However, life has a way of testing even the strongest bonds. A few days later, Armin came home looking upset. I could tell something was wrong before he even spoke. He sat down heavily on the couch and buried his face in his hands. "Mom, at school," he finally said. "Some kids are making fun of me. They say I'm weak because I talked about my feelings." My heart ached for him. No child should have to face cruelty for being honest and vulnerable. I pulled him into a hug and whispered, "You are brave, Armin. Those words don't define you. What matters is that you stay true to yourself." He looked up at me with tears in his eyes. "But it hurts so much." "I know, sweetheart," I said. "But remember, the people who truly care about you will accept you just as you are." That evening we talked about ways to handle bullying, from telling trusted adults to standing firm in who he was. I promised to be there for him every step of the way. The next morning I called his school and arranged a meeting with his teachers and counselor. I wanted to make sure Armin felt supported not just at home but at school too. When we met, I explained everything calmly and clearly. The school staff listened attentively and assured me they would take action to address the bullying. It was a relief to know we weren't alone. Back at home, Armin felt stronger knowing he had allies. Together, we developed a plan for him to report any incidents and reminded him that asking for help was a sign of courage, not weakness. Days turned into weeks, and while challenges remained, I could see Armin's resilience growing. He was learning to navigate the world with honesty and strength. One afternoon, my husband surprised us both by suggesting we start a family journal, a place where each of us could write about our thoughts and feelings. It was his way of encouraging open communication and healing. We placed the journal in the living room and soon it became a cherished tradition. Armin wrote about his hopes, fears, and even his dreams for the future. I shared stories from my own past, and my husband expressed his gratitude for our family's journey. Through these simple acts, our home transformed into a sanctuary of trust and love. Yet, even with all this progress, there were moments of doubt. I sometimes wondered if the wounds of the past would ever fully heal or if the shadows would return. But then I would look at Armin, his growing confidence, his willingness to open up, and I would know we were moving forward. One evening, as we sat together reading through the journal entries, Armin turned to me and said, "Mom, I feel like I'm finally becoming myself." Tears welled in my eyes. "That's all I ever wanted for you." We hugged tightly, knowing that this was just the beginning of a long, beautiful journey. As the days passed, I saw how important it was to keep nurturing this new closeness. We planned more family activities, quiet nights talking, and moments to celebrate even the smallest victories. Through it all, I learned that healing takes time, patience, and a willingness to be vulnerable. Most of all, it takes love. The days after our family journal tradition began felt warmer, as if a soft light was gently breaking through the cracks of our past struggles. Armin seemed more at ease, and even my husband and I found ourselves smiling more, sharing small moments that felt like little victories. One afternoon, while the sun filtered through the curtains, Armin approached me hesitantly with the journal in his hand. "Mom, can I read you something I wrote?" he asked. I nodded, heart pounding with a mix of curiosity and hope. He cleared his throat and began, "I used to think I had to hide who I was to be accepted. I was scared people would laugh at me or push me away. But now I'm learning that being honest about my feelings is okay. It's scary, but it's also freeing." His words struck me deeply. I reached out and squeezed his hand. "That's very brave, Armin. You're doing amazing." He smiled shyly and said, "Thanks, Mom. I'm glad we started this journal. It helps me put things into words." That night, after Armin went to bed, I sat with my husband and shared the moment. "He's changing," I said softly. "I see it in him, like a new light shining." He nodded. "It's been a tough road, but I think we're getting there." The following week brought a new challenge. Armin came home with an invitation to join the school's drama club. At first he seemed unsure. "Mom, I don't know if I'm good enough," he confessed. I smiled and said, "You don't have to be perfect. It's about having fun and trying new things." Encouraged, he decided to give it a try. Watching him attend rehearsals and slowly come out of his shell was heartwarming. He made new friends, found confidence in expressing himself, and even surprised us with a small performance at the school's talent show. The applause he received that night was more than just for his acting. It was for the courage he'd shown in stepping out of his comfort zone. Meanwhile, at home, the journal became a place not only for reflection but also for dreams and plans. Armin wrote about his hopes for college, traveling, and making a difference in the world. His writing grew more detailed, thoughtful, and full of promise. One evening, while flipping through the journal, I read a passage where he wrote about forgiveness, not just for others but also for himself. It was a reminder that healing isn't linear. It's messy and ongoing. Around this time, I noticed my husband making efforts too. He started asking Armin about his day, listening more patiently, and sharing stories from his own youth. The bond between father and son, which had once been strained, was slowly mending. I felt grateful that our family was growing stronger together. The past wounds were still there, but they no longer defined us. Instead, they were reminders of how far we'd come. One rainy afternoon, as we sat inside watching the drops race down the windows, Armin turned to me with a serious expression. "Mom, can I ask you something?" "Of course," I replied. "Do you think people can really change? Like, can someone who hurt others before become different?" I thought carefully and said, "I believe people can change if they want to. It takes time, effort, and honesty. What's important is that we keep trying." He nodded slowly. "I want to be better. Not just for me but for everyone around me." His words filled me with pride and a renewed sense of hope. As weeks passed, our home became a sanctuary of understanding. We faced setbacks, moments when old habits crept in or when doubts clouded our minds, but we faced them together. Armin started volunteering at a local community center, helping younger kids with their homework. Seeing him give back was inspiring, a sign that he was finding purpose beyond himself. One day, while driving him to his volunteer shift, he said, "Mom, I think I'm finally starting to believe in myself." Tears welled in my eyes, and I reached over to hold his hand. "I've always believed in you." That night, as I lay in bed, I thought about the journey we'd been on, from silence and fear to openness and hope. I realized that love, patience, and trust were the true healers. Before sleep took me, I whispered a quiet prayer of gratitude for the family we were becoming. Imperfect, yes, but stronger and more connected than ever. That Sunday morning began just like any other, quiet, slow, and filled with the smell of brewing tea. But there was a stillness in the air, like something was waiting to happen. Armin was in the kitchen helping me wash dishes. He had grown more comfortable in his skin lately, more open, more thoughtful. The weight he used to carry seemed lighter now. Yet I sensed something was on his mind. "Everything okay?" I asked, handing him a towel to dry the plates. He hesitated for a moment, then nodded. "Yeah. Just thinking. About." He shrugged. "Stuff. Life. People. Mistakes." I gave him a small smile. "You don't have to carry all of it alone, you know. You've come a long way." He glanced at me, his eyes warm. "I know. Thanks for always being here." That sentence lingered with me. It reminded me how far our family had come, how our bond had grown through shared vulnerability and forgiveness. Later that day, my husband was heading out to visit his mother across town. Armin and I stayed back, both of us enjoying the quiet. We sat in the living room reading, each lost in our own little world, yet the silence between us felt calm, not uncomfortable. A few hours passed before Armin suddenly looked up. "Mom, can I ask you something a bit serious?" "Always." He cleared his throat. "Do you think it's ever okay to forgive someone who really messed up? Like, not just once but many times?" I studied his expression. "That depends," I replied gently. "Are they truly sorry? Are they willing to change?" He nodded. "I think so. But sometimes I wonder if I deserve a second chance too. I've messed up more than I'd like to admit." I reached out and placed my hand on his. "Armin, growth isn't about being perfect. It's about learning. And you've been learning. That takes courage." He didn't say anything for a while. Then, in a quiet voice, he asked, "Did Dad ever mess up?" That caught me off guard. I paused, then said honestly, "Yes. We both did. There were times we drifted apart emotionally. But we found our way back because we wanted to." He looked down. I want to be better than I used to be. You already are, I whispered. That evening something shifted. Not in a dramatic way, but in the soft, quiet realization that our family had healed in ways we once thought were impossible. We were no longer defined by our past. We were building a new foundation. One choice, one honest conversation at a time. The next morning, Armin surprised me with a note on the kitchen counter. Read, "Thanks for always seeing the good in me even when I couldn't see it myself. I'm starting to believe that maybe I'm worth something. And that's because of you." Tears filled my eyes. It was the kind of note I never expected to receive, but one I would cherish forever. Time kept moving as it always does. Armin eventually graduated and began pursuing studies in youth counseling, wanting to help others like him. Those who had felt lost, misunderstood, or broken. One night, months later, we were sitting outside under the stars talking about everything and nothing. "I used to hate silence," he said. "It made me feel like something was wrong. But now I kind of like it. It feels peaceful." "That's growth," I smiled. He laughed softly. And here I thought I'd never be the kind of person who'd talk about peace and self-reflection. "Life surprises us." He nodded. "It really does." We sat there for a while longer, just listening to the night. No tension. No unspoken pain. Just presence. It felt like closure even if we hadn't asked for it. A few weeks later, my husband, Armin, and I went on a short trip together. Nothing fancy, just a quiet cabin in the hills. We cooked meals together, played board games, and shared stories. The laughter was genuine, the connection real. It was on that trip I realized we had finally crossed into a new chapter. We were no longer surviving. We were living together. On our last night there, Armin looked at me and said, "I think this is the happiest I've ever been." My heart swelled. Me too. As we drove back home, I looked at him through the rearview mirror. He was humming along to the radio, looking out the window with a peaceful expression. Years ago, he was a boy full of questions, confusion, and pain. Now he was becoming a man grounded in self-awareness, forgiveness, and strength. Looking back, I remembered all the hard conversations, the long silences, the moments where I questioned whether we'd ever come back from the edge. But we did. We came back with more love, more understanding, and more hope than we'd ever had before. And it all started the moment we chose to stop hiding, to stop pretending, and to start telling the truth, even when it was uncomfortable. That was the real turning point. Not some grand gesture, not a dramatic event, but a simple, honest choice to heal together. Now, whenever I see Armin smiling or hear him offering advice to someone younger, I know we did something right. We chose love. We chose understanding. We chose to grow no matter how hard it was. And in the end, that made all the difference.